What about the latest kid on the block, XMRV? This virus was reported to be associated with chronic fatigue syndrome last October in the publication in the journal Science, a very prestigious journal. And in order to get published, the scientists involved had to do a lot of extra studies to really make a persuasive case to the reviewers of the article. This is a picture of the virus. It's a retrovirus. Where you see on the left budding retrovirus is the virus leaving a cell that it's infected, and on the right you see the virus outside the cell going on, thank you, to infect other cells. Good. Next slide. So what did they say in this study? It was pretty impressive. They said they found the nucleic acid, the RNA of this virus, or the DNA of the virus after it enters the human genes, in 67% of patients compared with only 4% of healthy control subjects. They said they found the protein of the virus in 63% of patients compared with none of the healthy control subjects. They said they found this virus not in cells, but freely floating in the plasma of 83, the plasma, the blood, which is a combination of fluid and cells. They found it in the cells, but they also found it floating freely in the liquid of the blood, not in the cells, in 83% of the small number of patients they tested versus none of the controls. And they found that the patients with the illness were making antibodies to this virus in 50% of the small number of patients versus none of the healthy controls who were tested. So that's a reasonably impressive set of numbers, but there are many. It is not a perfect study, as the authors of the study would admit. In a perfect study, you would, for one thing, like all of these tests to have been done on all of the patients. And as you see, most of these tests, 3 of them were done on much smaller numbers of patients and of healthy control subjects. And there are other things that make it less than a perfect study. But as someone who has never published a perfect study, I'm sympathetic with that. But the question is, could other groups around the world repeat these results? Well, other groups actually haven't even tried, at least published yet, having tried to look at 3 of these 4 things that the first group did. They have only tried to repeat this part. And 3 groups have found that they are unable to confirm these results. So there is a sort of provisional judgment right now among many infectious disease experts that maybe there was just something wrong with this study and maybe it wasn't right. I will give you my judgment, which is that as I read the 3 papers that have failed to confirm this result, although they were done by very skilled people and were solid work in many respects, there is one problem with all of them that could have undermined their ability to find what they were looking for. So it is my judgment that the dust has not yet settled on this controversy, and I would say we still don't know if this retrovirus is associated with CFS. But I don't believe we can now dismiss that at all. Next slide. What if it were shown by other groups that this virus is associated with CFS? That would be a very important finding, but it would just lead to more questions. For example, is the virus real? Well, yes, we already know the virus is real. Is it associated with this illness? As I've said, that remains to be confirmed. Is it associated with the illness in as many people, 67%? as was reported in October? That remains to be confirmed. And is it a cause of CFS? That remains to be confirmed. But what if it turns out to be associated? Next slide. It could mean two things. The simplest thing it could mean is that the virus actually is a cause of CFS, either acting alone or in combination with other viruses that live within us. Or it could mean that this virus is actually pretty common inside most of us, but in very small numbers, so it's hard to pick it up on tests that we have today with today's technology. And in CFS, there's something that goes wrong with the immune system, for which I've already summarized the evidence, and that this virus is asleep within us and it gets awakened by the immune dysfunction, but it's not a cause of the illness. It's the cart, not the horse. It's the horse, rather, not the cart. So it could be a cause. It could be just a reflection of the illness, not a cause. And we obviously don't even know yet that it is associated with CFS. But if it should be found, we still wouldn't show with that association that it was a cause. But there are ways of looking at whether it's a cause, the most obvious of which would be to use medication that, at least in the test tube, kills the virus. If that kind of medication led to lower levels of the virus in the body and to people feeling a lot better, that would be pretty good evidence that it was a cause. But we're not there yet. We don't yet know that this virus is associated, and we certainly don't know if it is a causal agent. And as I've said, while a big part of me wishes that a single germ could be found to explain all cases of this illness, because that would make everyone's work trying to figure it out and cure it a lot simpler. I have never believed that it's going to be that simple. I think that we already know, and I've summarized some of the evidence, that several other infectious agents can trigger this illness. And maybe XMRV will prove to be one of them. Maybe an uncommon cause, maybe a common cause. We just don't know yet. So, viruses and CFS, just to summarize my own current view, is that infectious agents, most of them viruses, but sometimes bacteria, can probably trigger and perpetuate CFS. I think there's enough evidence in the literature of that now to say that that's pretty well established. The agents all share a common property. They can't be eradicated by the immune system. There's now solid evidence that CFS can follow a new infection. I showed you the Australia study that nailed that to most everyone's satisfaction. And it's possible that in CFS, different infectious agents interact to cause symptoms. So, for instance, if XMRV were associated with this illness, it could be that it reawakens some other virus that's in the body, and that you need the two of them together to cause the symptoms of the illness. That, tough to study, but doable, and first we've got to find an association and then pursue it. Next slide.